How's it going, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Immersive Podcast. Today we've got I don't want to say an extra special guest, but okay, we'll say it. We've got an extra special guest, one that I'm particularly excited about. Sarah Breskman Cosme, author of A Hypnotist Journey to the Sphinx and A Hypnotist Journey to Atlantis. She is considered one of the most foremost hypnotists in the world, particularly in the regression hypnotherapy arena, uh, associated with Loris Cannon's work. Sarah, how are you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks so much for that introduction. I'm excellent today. How about you?
I'm very well. I'm honestly just really excited. I've had a really good day, and I'm just really happy to see you and happy to be having a conversation with you. And thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you. Me too.
I've
I'm excited.
actually I've got one of your books right here. She didn't ask me to do this. I just happened to keep it in my background, and now she's here, so that's great.
That's really nice.
So, Sarah, you're coming at me from the Keys today. Is that where the Florida Keys? Is that where you are?
Yes, I actually just finished a session here in
Oh, very, very cool.
in the beautiful Florida Keys, although it's really hot right now. And we just had a
Yeah,
lot of weather.
I hear you. I am in Tampa, Florida. As a lot of folks know, that's where my home studio is, but might be going on the road a little bit for the summer. But for now, Tampa's where I call home, and I've always just felt pulled to Florida. I don't know why. I didn't
Well, it's funny that you say that and it's
the
funny you're
pull.
from Florida today because my client actually flew in here from California and she's always wondering why she was so drawn to Florida. And her higher self was saying that basically the Atlantean energetic imprint is just so strong here that of course you can connect with Atlantis all over the world, just through meditation, but it's amplified here in Florida for some reason. And for some people, that's really helpful when they actually go to a place like Florida or a place close to where Atlantis was. And that's why they said she's just very connected. They said she didn't have to live here, but she had to visit.
Just to visit, yeah, just to
Yeah.
visit and get the connection. Absolutely. That's very interesting. I love those little synchronicities. I search for them everywhere. I don't want to say I search for them, but I go through life happy and giddy when I find them. And the more I live my life that way, the more I notice those synchronicities and the more they pop up. So it's great. And honestly, it's cool to talk to you today because obviously you're you know passion, the road, you're a trailblazer, and you become a trailblazer in past life regression hypnotherapy and the QHHT method in particular. That's something it's rather new to me, but it's not like brand new. But it's new to me in the sense that I finally went down that road, and I actually at least had somebody take me down the regression hypnotherapy path. And I wasn't sure. I went with no expectations, but I came out of it thinking it was about 30 minutes long, and it ended up being like close to 3 hours. Uh, so I really was, under there. I have a video. Yeah, I talked about being in a place that ended up being very much descriptively sounding like Lemuria. The clothing, the gold bracelets and things like that. There was Hollow Earth. There was all sorts of like different things that came out in that one session. And it's kind of funny because, I didn't remember a ton right afterwards, but, it's been, like I said, about a week or so now, and I'm starting to like recall more and more and more from that trance, which I think is interesting. Is that kind of something typical that you like recall more from those regressions over time? Do people do that?
Definitely. It's almost like a dream when you start to remember bits and pieces of your dream, and then things will start to make sense too. Because what I find so fascinating about sessions is it almost like bumps you into alignment with your purpose. And people always notice after their session that things just start flowing and working out better. And it can feel like the session was very subtle, but so much energetically happens, like behind the scenes,
Very
you know,
large energetic
really
exchange.
energetically. Yes, yes. That's really cool that you had a session. So what did you get from your session?
Well, I guess I talked a lot about in it of little blurbs of it where, my big question, my job was to constantly ask why. That was my job. What do you do when you find out why? I just said, you just keep asking why. You never stop. You never stop asking why. You never stop asking why. Some people worship gods. I don't. It's not my job. I guess, it kind of painted a picture like I was like a scroll or like a seer or a study, like an intellectual, I guess, of sorts. And what the person who had done the regression was referring to as either Lemuria or and then it got kind of blurry with Hollow Earth, which I don't know if I'm not an expert in the history. Yeah, there's just cool stuff that came out, and there was also some things about like riveting attachments and things like that, which has always been a theme, through lives, which is funny because just synchronous, of course, with current time in my life. I am reading a lot of attachments. I'm changing a lot of things. Change is good, but it's also, naturally a stressor. Any kind of change is always a little difficult on us souls wearing these meat suits.
It's so hard, isn't it? It's not easy, but it's like the one thing we have to do is constantly change, and it's the hardest thing for us. I mean, even like subconsciously, it's everything pushing us to change, make changes, and then we have our like conscious mind just wanting everything to be the same. It's such a funny dichotomy where it's like part of us wants to keep everything the same, the other wants us to change. It's
And get
hard.
lost in that. Yeah, it
Yeah.
is. It is hard. But I'm sure you've received a little bit of an insight into these things over the years, having so many clients under regression. I'm sure how often have you been regressed? I was curious
I
to that. I'm sure you've been under regression before, but how many times? How often do you do that?
That's
You
such
let
a good
somebody.
question. I mean, I try to get one a year,
Okay.
actually. So it's almost like things will just start going into more of an alignment for me, and I'll
Mm-hmm.
be more on my path after my session. And then it's almost like an onion, like different layers will start to unfold, of course, like anything. But I feel like it's like you bypass so much by doing these sessions. You just learn about yourself, you get the messages from your higher self, you put yourself on your path, and then a year later, do it again. Find out what else is
I
going on.
I would agree with that. I mean, there's a lot. There's a lot packed into a small pill there with the past
It
life
is.
regression. I mean, of course, having done only one, I mean, I'm no expert, but just what I had to reflect on afterwards was absolutely incredible for me. And just
Well, I
two,
mean, I created these workshops and classes just because I know, just from so much experience, like what I feel like I need. So I have these 3-day workshops that I do. So people don't just have one day, they have 3 days, and they go bit by bit to really uncover all the aspects, not only like healing themselves, what they're supposed to do right now in their life, how they can figure out the messages, and they get like a whole, they can really immerse themselves with their higher self in these 3-day workshops.
it's very immersive.
It
Like,
is.
it's like an
Yes.
immersive podcast. Real quick, that's a really good way to put it, to really immerse themselves, to just, I mean, because it kind of implies that any ego, any extra, part of self that really isn't part of self with a capital S, that is an illusion, kind of goes away when you're immersed true. When I'm think of myself being immersed truly in something, and the fake things that are illusions, that are coping mechanisms, that are defense mechanisms, tend to drop off. In
Right.
those times when I'm immersed, and time seems to either stand still or move so quickly.
Right. Totally.
Those times that we all have that are special.
Exactly.
I know you have a few things coming up, a few events that you have coming up this summer. Did you want to talk about any of those? You have the All Ship Happily Now happening in the
Yes.
fall. You want to tell people about that? Do you have anything coming up before that we should know
Well,
about?
yes, I have a workshop coming up in the Florida Keys actually in
Oh,
August. And that's another one of my 3-day workshops, which I really love doing these. I only have a few spots left, but I love it because not only can people just join with like-minded people and really immerse themselves with a group that's also on a healing journey and path, but they seem to become like family members after it. And it's another thing I
Yeah.
love. And the higher self that comes through my clients is always talking about the new earth communities. And it's one of the reasons why they told me to do this, because they said it's like practice for these new earth communities. So you can see what it's like to really be amongst like-minded individuals. I have one that's
Cool.
coming up in August. And then after that, I'm doing another Egypt trip where I'm taking people to Egypt, which is super fun for me because I just love
Yeah.
giving them this type of experience and sharing what I know about all the places in Egypt. After that, I have the All Shift Happily Now conference coming up, which is going to be so much fun with
Yeah.
Tim and Sarah Zuna and Kedrick. And it's going to be such an amazing event. You know, all these people from all over the world getting together and really bringing in this community. I think it's beautiful. And I'm going to
Uh,
be doing a live hypnosis session. So I actually am bringing, well, I'm going to do two things. I'm going to bring my client who under hypnosis is like a perfect connector to extraterrestrials. And so people can ask their own questions. I mean,
oh,
he's a
wow. That's kind of
really
unique.
pure channel. And so, I mean, people can even ask personal questions because it's not him answering.
It's
It's
not him. Yeah.
actually other higher conscious beings. So I'm going to do a live hypnosis session there. And I'm also going to give the group a chance to do a session with me because I'm going to do a group session. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I know the other presenters have some other cool things they're going to do, but yeah, I'm really excited about what's to come. And then of course, like this year, I have a lot of things going on. I always love the Conscious Life Expo. To me, that's one of my favorite expos. And then doing the Sedona one. And this year is my first year that I'll be speaking at Gaia. Oh my God, I've been wanting to for so long.
At like a live event.
Yeah, at the Gaia
Yeah.
Fair in Colorado. They asked me just a couple weeks ago, and I was like, yes, of course I will be there.
Well, congratulations.
Thanks.
Absolutely. And you so deserve it. You are certainly a worthy speaker, a worthy presenter, worthy of awards. You've got a lot ahead of you.
Sweet.
I see
It's
a
really
great path
fun.
ahead
I
for
mean, I
you, of
just was
course.
really excited about that. But those are my
Yeah.
things. Those that are coming up.
Congratulations. That's quite
Thanks.
amazing. Very,
Thank
very
you.
cool. So I recently saw you on the Next Level Soul podcast. I think it was a month or so ago with
Right.
Alex Ferrari. That was a really good episode. I occasionally tune into that podcast, so that was really cool. There was like a few things that kind of plucked my brain on there. You had mentioned something, and something that I'm kind of personally interested in, so I thought I wanted to ask you about. You had mentioned something about Atlantis and having, something like med beds is, in the future as far as how their healthcare was. I heard you speak on med beds, basically something like med beds, in that famous first subject of yours who have taken you to Atlantis for the first time under regression. Um, I have, friends who are in the medical industry, doctors, not just doctors, but people who are in, related healthcare fields. And med beds are like a really like emerging technology right now in the
Mhm.
real world, but they've also kind of got this weird, I guess, for lack of a better word, fringe concept to them. Are you familiar with like, have you seen these like med beds that people are doing and getting into for anti-aging and things like that today? And
I,
what your clients have talked to you about in like Atlantean
yeah,
times is that
I haven't seen the med beds personally. And but I thought it was interesting because when I was working with my client under hypnosis, or my friend actually, didn't believe in any of this stuff previously.
Mhm.
What was interesting to me was she remembered growing up in this ancient society that we call Lemuria now, but they called it Aman actually. But she grew up in a way where they were so spiritually developed, but they didn't have technology like, the Atlanteans did, which is really interesting, first of all. but they were so developed with their spirituality that they had other methods for healing. Like they used herbs, if they needed to like heal pain. They the herbs and the plants were, I would say, more effective. And also, energy and different things were more effective a lot of the time than what we're given today. Because I always would ask especially not just her, but other clients under hypnosis who didn't know her, didn't know I was working on that
Of course.
project. And they would say, yes, it's very effective. It works. They would always say that. Never like sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Like, how that we run up against that here.
Yeah.
What was also
U-
interesting,
Unanimous is hard to argue with, of course.
it
Yeah.
is. Yes, it works. What was interesting is in Atlantis, they had such high technology. I mean, they had technology that would regrow organs. They could basically fix anything. And they were using like stem cell research and different was see what was interesting was they were using technology, and a lot of this technology came from other places, so it wasn't like
Like
human technology,
extraterrestrial.
right? Extraterrestrial technology. But what was interesting is throughout learning so much about Atlantis and Lemuria, there needed to be a balance. What went completely wrong for the Atlanteans was they started to alter their own DNA. So
Hmm.
apparently it's like a cyclical thing that our souls have done in so many different ancient civilizations, or so many civilizations, where we forget that we're here to develop ourselves. So when you start manipulating the DNA is when you actually lead to the civilization's downfall, is what
It's
I started to learn. So yeah, you can advance with the technology all you want, but when you splice your own genes, or say you put like a link in your
state.
brain,
Yeah.
even in the future when this does come about, because the higher self always says this is the choice point that we're in right now. This is why so many souls want, basically one of the reasons
Ascend.
we're coming to evolve ourselves, because we're superhumans, or we have the potential to do anything. You have
Think
the choice. Do you want to take the easy road? And it looks like the easy road. But when you start putting chips in your brain, and because you're going to be told, people are going to be told, this will make you feel better. Actually, it's going to heal you if you put this chip in you. Or you
yeah.
do this or this alteration. Actually, it leads to the downfall of your body. So if you just think of any kind of like manipulation, it doesn't lead to you being healthier. What a lot of us have come to do differently is to evolve ourselves spiritually, mentally, and physically. And we do that through organically doing that. And so Lemuria showed us that, but they didn't have enough balance. Apparently, they did not have enough balance with the masculine and feminine.
They
They were
didn't
too
they have too much
aesthetic,
feminine? Was it too
too
much
much
feminine
feminine.
energy?
Yeah, it wasn't balanced correctly. So apparently, we came to balance these two sides, and we do that through, being triggered and having all these different choices to see which. I mean, you can't do it wrong anyway. It doesn't matter, really. It's just learning experience. But that's one of the things that the higher self has said we're here to do differently. And a lot of us, I think, internally know this, but we're taught to look for easy ways out all the time. And so, in like so many future civilizations that have done this before, that they just show me, what they did and how they didn't even want to like feel bad. I mean, you think about how you don't want to have that crappy feeling. It would be so nice to just like take a pill and not feel that ever,
Yeah,
or
like
get rid of it.
the
And
the
that just
soul
did.
the soma in the Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. It's like a fiction thing. The leaders just walk around and they give everybody a pill whenever they're unhappy. That's their
Right.
future.
But you think about it too from the standpoint of like many of us are trying to heal ourselves, and it seems so frustrating. Like, what am
There's
I near?
so many paths, and you're right. I hear it come. I'm not a healer or anything. I don't do what you do, and there's other things that people do, and I respect the hell out of people who go beyond the beaten path, and don't, especially in the West, and aren't taking the traditional Western medicine path, and out there as healers. Even what you're doing, of course there's traditional Western hypnosis. I mean, it's kind of weird to talk about it that way, but just anybody out there doing energy healing, or anybody out there meditating and getting better at it and understanding the nature of self within the capital S, and going into trances, and anything of that material, yoga, studying ancient practices, studying the frequency, tapping into any of that stuff, I just think is, it deserves just a tip of the hat, a little bit of
Yeah,
respect, a little bit of honor, and especially, people like yourself who are really out there actually applying these gifts, to real people, real souls with meat suits. And, I'm just, of course, happy that I can spread,
but you're helping a lot, because I think what it really comes down to is belief system. Because it's, if we are
Mhm.
so powerful, we could literally heal ourselves if we believed it enough, like right now. Then it's our belief system, and you're helping to change that by helping to show people, look, other people heal this way. And then it really helps them, because then they're shifting the way they perceive things, and they're getting away from that negative programming that you need, a pill to fix this or that, so.
Think that ties in so much with just my entire ethos, and kind of what led me into, what I see as my, what my life is now, who I really am as a, a person. I mean, a lot of what kind of took me away from the amnesia of being behind the veil was things, kind of at first they were more, like disclosure, and history, and real world issue based type things, like suppressed technology, suppressed medicine, things of that nature. Understanding the way that finance works, and understanding that, that might not be the case. And of course, going into like just all sorts of different rabbit holes like that. My mother got cancer a few years ago, lung cancer. She actually just passed away
Mm.
about 2 months ago. Saw a lot of things in that industry over the years that I mean, I can't say that I loved. And just those little things planted seeds, and that was the stuff that just kind of turned me on to just a different way of thinking, and a paradigm shift. But that really was what it was about. I think you hit the nail on the head. It's about a mindset shift, a paradigm shift, a different way of looking at things.
Yeah.
And then the rest of it comes later. There are definitely higher brow ideas. There's all sorts of things people can go down the path of. People can start channeling light language. People can start meditating. People can start doing, contact experiences and things like that. But you don't have to be doing those things.
Great.
If you're not doing all those, if you're not doing any of those things right at this moment, it's okay. It's I think when like Sarah said, just that change in mindset, that change in looking at things is a really good sign that you might be on the right path. And for me, I'm always just given signs that I'm still on the right path. Like that's, I don't know, that's my guiding force. I just look for the signs, and I don't know, what I interpret them to say is that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. So
Oh, so
I trust in them, But it's anything anyway. Back to like suppressed tech and meds and what me got into all that kind of stuff. I heard you mention some again on Next Level Soul podcast that was about the world was kind of waiting for this info, and now becoming
yep.
ready for it, due to their raising consciousness. And that's something that I've heard Dolores Cannon talk about as well. I always speak of like a critical mass of sorts, that, we need a certain number of awakened, a certain number, a certain percentage, a certain something. I'm not sure what it is. We've all heard the 144,000 souls, whatever, things like that. Can you speak to that a little bit
Sure.
as far as where we are and what we're ready for as a
Oh,
society?
sure. Well, I am sure it helps to have like a large group that's also like-minded. But I think what really is important is just each individual person. You know what I find super fascinating is that when people are remembering like the previous cataclysm, like Mars or something like that, that there were different timelines. So, you know, this whole talk about the divergent timeline, some people will have one experience and some will not. Well, I find it really fascinating that when people are really remembering the Mars timeline and what happened on Mars, so there was like a cataclysm, it seemed like a, who knows exactly, like I know my theories, but
Seems to be the consensus that something happened and it's kind of a barren planet now.
right. Well, it seemed like there were two timelines. So there's a timeline that's still living there. So
Interesting.
yeah, so they had shifted. So they had gone through their ascension and they're still living there as if nothing ever happened. So if you think about that, and I'm not, not talking just a couple clients, like there's a lot of people that actually remember this and they see this that's still there, then what does that mean about where we're headed? So I think it's mostly important for ourselves to figure out, how we can best serve ourselves and listen to ourselves. I mean, you can't really, maybe you chose to be on a timeline that
A
goes to chaos.
certain timeline.
Look at all the stuff we choose for ourselves to grow and stuff like that. And maybe you're here to help people, and who knows? I mean, maybe it's not in your soul's interest to just go on the best and highest timeline,
Yeah.
So,
Maybe
but
it's something your soul's already experienced and it doesn't need that experience again. Maybe you already done the ascension high timeline thing.
a lot of us, not most of us, but a lot of us
Shoot.
have already done it. So a lot of us have done it, come back here to be like way showers and helpers for this because it's kind of hard. It's hard when you're in a physical body and you're being like broadcast all this information about how you can't shift your your frequency, or how you're small, or how you have to listen to authority or whatever it is. But essentially, what I've been told recently is that we all have our individual timeline. So we all have our own reality based on what we're focused on and what we believe. Like if you, like the higher self has said through my clients, if you want to heal yourself, you have to expect it and believe it. And it's that simple. It can be
Like
that simple. You know, when people,
typical, like almost simple law of attraction, like
uh,
stuff, like
you know,
simple manifestation principles.
right, if you like, same if you were going to use a med bed and you just expect this is going to heal you and you expect it. If you expect the healing, it helps a little bit.
I mean,
Um,
hence the placebo effect, of course. I mean, yeah,
exactly.
absolutely.
So we all have this bubble of reality based on what we believe. Apparently, we're headed for like a nexus point, a joining of these kind of like these timelines and these individual belief systems. Something, whatever it is in the works as a potential. It doesn't mean it's definitely going to be that way, but there's potentials that we are merging all these timelines and then shooting out into like three distinct timelines, is what they consistently say. And I hear other people talking about similar things. So this is just what comes through my sessions.
It comes through, yeah.
So whatever nexus point that merges them, it could be so many different things. It's just something that will shift the perspective in everyone's mind. You won't be able to ignore it, and it will be
Yeah,
something profound.
and
Per-
it's unlikely to be something exactly as expected for everyone,
Exactly.
right? I mean, it could be totally just
It could even be like a solar flash. It could be like the dismantling of the veil. There's so many different things. It could be like a weather event. It could just be an
right.
extraterrestrial event. So it's something that's going to shift the perspective. And I bet you that even that hasn't been fully thought out yet because it keeps changing. And that's how these things work. So they never give you the the future, that just give you potentials because it can change according to our
Yeah,
belief system. So whatever this is, some higher consciousness say that there's a potential that the comet with a tail could go in front of the sun. And if the tail's in front of the sun, it might trigger a solar flash. And if that happens, it will dismantle the veil. Nobody, higher selves are talking about the shape of this earth. They call it like a toroidal field with a hollow in the center.
The donut
And
shape. Yeah.
and all of the veil that's surrounding it will just be dismantled, so everyone will see into all the dimensions. This would shift everyone's perspective instantly, and that would be the merging. That's just a future potential. There's other ones, of course.
Right. It's just a
And then
future
it will go into
potential.
and then it would go into 3 timelines. So the highest one would be the one where other versions of ourselves, like extraterrestrial versions, will help ourselves. They'll actually be teachers. They won't need human bodies anymore. So a lot of your friends that are like pretty much extraterrestrial is described in a body will just be their true self. And
Most of my friends are, yeah.
for them, and so then we'll clean up our oceans, teach our children new things, and just have a really beautiful society. It looks like we're telepathic. Then the middle one seems to go down the same trajectory as the grays, or just not only just the grays, other civilizations past that have done the same thing. And they
word mistakes.
Well, they don't consider it a mistake, believe it or not. They don't. A lot of them, when you're speaking with them, will just say they kind of look at it differently. They look at it as everything leads you to where it is now, and that is the way it's supposed to be.
Place in the cosmos, place in the collective, etc. kind of thing.
It depends on what collective you're talking to. But yeah, there are some that do consider it a mistake and that they're rewriting it. There's some that consider this to be the way that it had to go, just like many higher selves consider Atlantis being destroyed and Lemuria being destroyed as something that needed to happen, and they always knew. Just like many talk about the Mars civilization that needed to be destroyed as it always needed to be destroyed. So it's interesting, the different perspectives. So then the middle timeline will go down in the grays, and they'll eventually lose the planet and have to do this again, the same cycle that they do over and over again. And then the negative timeline seems, and those souls that want a really full, to be immersed in a 3D reality would be transferred to another 3D place, because there's multiple of them.
Similar to this one, yeah, like that multiverse theory, something where the endless versions of what we are in now.
Because if you think about it, you're kind of the one creating your reality, but you're really physically here in a sense. But when you go to the other side, it feels so much more real on the other side. So,
and I could attest to that, at least personally. I've only, I've had NDEs, real ones. I've actually been pronounced. I don't like saying that word, but I've been gone. I've been brought back and been gone for it feels like forever, but it can be just a few minutes. I've also naturally I've done the shamanistic, plant medicine trips and things like that with Mother Aya and the Bufo Toad, the 5-MeO and things like that. But it's crazy, the perception of I always liken it. I don't like to use those as much of the example. I'll use more the NDEs. I mean, when you're really in that space, what it really feels like is, to me anyway. Yeah, no, I haven't done thousands of them. Like Sarah's done thousands of regressions, but I've had a few legitimate NDEs, and I can tell you that every time it feels like. The best way I can describe it is you can't really describe it, but it's a feeling very similar to that of like I've been holding my breath and I've been underwater and now I'm out and now I can breathe and I don't have to hold my breath anymore. Like that was fine. I could hold my breath down there, but now there's so much more going on, and it's like home. It's kind of the best analogy that I can personally use, and
yeah, it's funny you say that because a lot of people describe it like this huge sense of relief. You just, it's almost like you forget how burdensome your body is when you're here. All the aches and pains and emotions, because people just notice like right away that sense of relief, like no emotions really either. I mean, not in the same way. The bird, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard. I may be incorrect, but I think I'm not. I think it was Jane Roberts who channeled Seth. Her books, through the 70s and 90s, I believe is the timeline that they were really coming out. I might be wrong on that too. But I think a quote was from Seth, and, she asked if the bodies that he had possessed as a soul, he was like a seventh dimensional being that she channeled via the author, Jane Roberts. And Seth replied that, his every body that he had ever had, every body that his soul had ever possessed had a massive impact on this very soul that he was, even from, the interlife cleansings and lessons and things like that. Like I've heard it said that the body has an impact on the soul itself. So I mean, I guess that
Love
would
it.
kind of beg the question, like, does abuse to the body cause abuse to the soul? Maybe could it be reversed?
I think so, because people seem to carry around energetic imprints their bodies before, so like sometimes if a person died a certain way, it like leaves some energy like imprint on them and they carry that, and it's interesting. But that's almost like the doorway into their soul. So like our little gateways or doorways are usually trauma or physical illness, and it's like masked as like something terrible, but when you open that door and you go into it is where it leads you to yourself.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I've had, some weird experiences I've had that really brought me to that belief was like I've had experience where I feel like I've met not future versions of myself yet, but different timeline, like future versions of really important people in my life. Like,
Oh, wow.
oh, like this is the 85-year-old version of so and so, and they just sought me out of nowhere, and they're talking to me, and I can like look them in the eye, and they're shaking my hand out of nowhere, and I can just tell, like, these connections, like from people from generations past, generations ago, whatever. And it's almost like, I mean, I guess it could be like a walk-in type of situation where a piece of that person's soul is there to just kind of comfort you and say hello in the moment and give you that sign. Or it could be like a timeline thing where it's, just you literally crossing timelines with somebody who you're very close with now, who's just there to remind you that maybe you're not on the right path, maybe you're in danger, maybe this, maybe that. There's all sorts of like fun little things like that happen.
Totally. Totally.
Um, so you were talking about, the technology and the like the med beds and things like that, and the way that maybe that Atlantis and the war they lived. You mentioned that something I heard you say that I thought was pretty interesting was, that obviously maybe they were supposed to fall. And of course, I see a lot of parallels right now between
Yeah.
the fall of Rome and, I live in America, so obviously the fall of Rome versus kind of what I see now in Western society. But I don't know that that's a terrible thing metaphorically. I mean, that's not really my area to dabble in. But then also, from what I've heard, and mostly people like yourself describe as the way that Atlantis fell, and kind of almost the yin to the yang of the way that the reason that Lemuria fell, because for us, and I mean us as in our society, the society that not that one that I go into when I meditate in trance or that when you're regressing someone, but the just everyday society that you and I live in, that cup you just drank out of, this cup here that I'm drinking out of. If we're Atlantis or if we're Lemuria, it doesn't seem like we have that counterpart. We don't have that other one, you know what I mean? I kind of wonder like where we might be headed in regards to, have we gone too divinely masculine this time? Have we gone too divinely feminine this time? And what's to come? It seems like on one hand we're on to ascend as a new earth, and that to me could kind of mean either a super organism ascension where the mother Gaia and all her every inhabitants we all, kind of ascend at once and leave something behind. We've heard about the way the Mayans ascended, where they just kind of left.
Mhm.
And then, and I guess would actually be the situation where the world itself actually really experiences I've gone through periods of thinking that the Mayan calendar and in 2012 really was the start of a pole shift, and maybe things are accelerating in a change, like a physical change right now. But the one thing I've came back to is if we're at Atlantis, or if we're at Lemuria, right now, a new civilization, it doesn't seem that we have the other one.
Right.
Being that one was a little more technologically advanced, a little more violent and things like that. And Lemuria, we always hear, was a little more divinely feminine. What does that look like, according to your clients, according to what you might have been told? What does that look like for the society that we live in right now? Are we
Yeah,
seeing
so
anything that's been repeated?
it's interesting because when the higher self is, speaking through my clients, they say we've already won, basically, because they see things from a now moment. So this has already played itself out in the future in a sense. So we wanted to fully embody this. So it's almost like it's already happened, it's already gone through the ascension process because everything's created in the ethereal realm
Mhm.
first. But how exactly we're going to play it out, we don't know yet. So essentially, there's nothing you can really do to take away from the ascension. Like it's already kind of happened. It has already happened. We're just going to play it out in a certain way. So we do ascend with the earth, but how that happens, I don't know. But another thing I find fascinating, and we haven't even, it will be a while till we're fully like in a different dimension. I mean, we're talking like you might be in another body or maybe a couple to keep
You might
going
be a few
with it.
bodies away from that.
Yeah. So, but also when things get even more like chaotic for a little while as we're playing this out, there may be, and there's one potential, there may be like, a split, a separation between groups of people. There may be like a group of people that really wants to follow with, the media and the current like plans going on. They just feel more comfortable doing that. And then there's the group that totally separates, that lives with these new earth communities. And so those would be two kind of groups that would be similar to Atlantis and Lemuria, if you think
Wow.
about it. Because we just
Okay.
keep doing this over and over again. And the new earth communities that find each other, and they really can build upon each other and help each other develop their own gifts. So they'll be like working with plants, they'll be working with sound and frequency, and who knows, maybe plant medicine, whatever it is that they choose in their group to help develop their skills and abilities. So that would be similar to Lemuria. And then same with the people that go with the governments, the same thing in a sense. And of course, they're going to develop these amazing technologies. It'll seem like that has a downside, which because it would be splicing human DNA.
Like
And you
CRISPR
know,
and things
yeah,
like that,
you
Yeah.
already see what they already started. It yeah, there's a lot of deeper levels to that. But essentially the two groups do split, but
It's
it
very
doesn't
insightful.
matter.
That's very insightful. Wow. I could imagine you answering that question as well as you answered it, at least for my own personal psyche. But like, okay, we are splitting into a metaphorical Atlantis and Lemuria. Oh my goodness! Like, never mind. That's. I'm gonna be thinking on that one all night, Sarah. That's quite interesting because what I always wonder is, and again I go back to like what really brought me into what really woke me up in a sense. I don't like using labels and cliches, but just took me out of 9 to 5. Like, oh cool, I made it through my early 20s safe, and I had a pretty crazy younger life. As people know, I was in the music industry. I lived a pretty privileged existence as far as touring around and playing in studio and things like that. I dabbled in the party lifestyle, and some illegalities for some years, but that's okay. I mean, those are things of my past. And then I became an interior designer and just
Oh,
did that for a long time, which was still art. I still liked it. But after, I don't know, 6 or 7 years maybe of being like a full-time interior designer and doing that like white collar thing, like I had told you before, all that the leading up time was my mother being, diagnosed ill, and seeing the systems and the things that we went through to try to. This was, of course, during the lockdowns and things like that too. At the same time, there's a lot of things at once, and of course, just that lovable magnet that loves to just pull you and take you places that you don't really understand. But the big thing for me was like a lot of it I actually do credit to Dr. Stephen Greer, is his work on suppressed technology and suppressed medical technology and things like that, because at that time that was what I was kind of personally angry about. Like,
of course,
it's like,
of course.
you want me to give you this, what?
Right.
You're like, and I would ask questions about, their alkaline diets or alkaline water, like, and get scoffed at and laughed out of
Yeah.
offices and things like that. So it's just, I don't know if those were catalysts for me or what, but it was a big part of where I am right now. And just again to say, very happy to be here speaking with you, Sarah Breskman Cosme. What's your opinion on that kind of, advanced technology that was present in Atlantean and Lemurian societies, and others? What's your thoughts on those technologies being here now, and maybe not being available to the public? But
There's
is
so
that something
much
that's ever?
technology that's very suppressed. And I think it's really frustrating. You had that experience. It's extremely frustrating when it's out there and it's just being hidden for somebody else's gain. That technology was, some of it was given in trade with our own, governmental body in order
Of
to
course.
experiment on some of us. So, there's a lot of people that would be very upset about if they knew the truth behind a lot of the stuff going on in these like underground bases and the experiments that are be going on and the suppressed technology. And I think right now we're headed to a place and time where most people, not everyone, most people are starting to see through a lot of what they've been lied to about. I think that kind of started for a lot of people during the whole Corona thing. So people are starting to see into things, and the people trying to hide all this stuff can't really hide that much longer. I
Seems like
mean,
they're really scurrying to try
they're
to
really scurrying. And
hide.
they're really trying to hide because it's just getting to a boiling point. And so if we hit that point where everyone's going to see what has been happening and the truth behind it, if that potential does come true, because that's also a potential, then that will shift the perspective of a lot of people. Because I think already a lot of people are starting to realize, wow, what else have I been lied to about? What else is there? And then they can go down the rabbit hole like, wow, you can heal yourself with sound and frequency. My gosh, or all these things that no one has, told us about. Like, you don't need that expensive pharmaceutical. You could do this. Who knew? I could just take that plant,
So
and see.
endless. Yeah, the
It's
examples, like, they
infinite.
go on and on and on. It's
I
really,
know.
I mean, I'm even still never surprised at things that I find out, from like somewhat reliable sources. Like,
Right.
wow, that
Yeah.
that really is the thing, I always refer to the quote from Ben Rich. He was the CEO of Lockheed Skunk Works from, I think, 1975 to 1995. And in his, commencement address, his retirement speech, he ended the speech with, if you've seen it on Star Trek or Star Wars, we've either been there, done that, or decided that it wasn't worth our
That's so true. It's so true.
time. I'm like,
Yeah,
yeah, I guess that's a good way to end your career if you're retiring
right,
anyway, you know. But
right.
and then the follow-up question to that, the story I heard was a gentleman who told me he asked him a question right after that. I was like, "What do you mean?" And Rich's response, I think, was something like, "How does ESP work?" You know, all things can be in all places at the same time. He said something
Yeah,
like really short answer, like exactly, and then kind of sauntered off into the sunset.
right.
Interesting guy.
Yeah. Wow.
So that's interesting. But I heard you say that like we could be, you know, theoretically like many incarnations away from like a true like new Earth ascension type thing. Where I feel like a lot of people, and even myself, sometimes I feel like you know we're almost there. It'll be in my lifetime. It's we're gonna wake up. We're gonna have full disclosure. Things are gonna happen. We're gonna live like you know, maybe not quite like the movie Avatar, but something close to it. You know, like that's kind of what I always kind of feel like that movie's real. So, would you say that's really, it might not be the case, or is it just not that simple? Is it more a case of timelines, or are we really just not as close as we think we
No,
are,
I mean, I
essentially?
think it depends on the individual person. You know yourself how close you are, because there are people already that have shifted already.
Right.
And so they're already there. They already went through the shift right now. So I think it's mostly just your own self, because you know the people that are just starting to come into this, and they're starting, to question things, and then there's people that are like on the brink of enlightenment. So I think, true enlightenment,
It's true. Yeah.
it just depends.
There's definitely levels, of course.
'Cause I don't think, I mean, just from my own perspective, I don't think this happens all of a sudden. I think it's an individual soul stream that
It,
goes,
do-
does it,
it,
it might happen sooner than later.
yeah, it does seem a little bit like too perfect and kind of drastic for there to just be like this one, like tomorrow's the day, and there'll be a solar
Right?
flash, and we'll just
That might happen.
ascend. And
That
kind
might
of
happen. It
it'd be
might.
cool. I
Yeah.
don't know. I mean, it's you
No,
know,
it seems like we've done that before. When we did do that before, it seemed to be really quick. Well, I think we've done this so many times before. And one of the memories people have of the solar flash happening before, it was like so fast, and we just evolved so quickly. It was too fast that it was hard to really experience. Like, it's almost like if you woke up tomorrow and you're like, "Oh man, I'm God. I forgot, but now I know, and I fully know." Being wasn't as
just like
much
you just wake
thrill.
up like with the light body, like the rainbow light body, and you
Yeah.
fully like have escaped the cycle of samsara. Yeah, I mean, I guess that would be kind of a
I think,
shock
yeah, I think
to
so.
just
But who
wake
knows?
up that way.
Yeah, I know. Who knows what it'll be like? But I think we're supposed to enjoy it and be
So
curious rather than judgmental of everything. Like, that's
I
what I always say.
That's so refreshing to hear you say. That's kind of what I people, you know, a common question is what's the whole purpose to life? And I always have come back to, and it's something that like I can say works now, and it worked when I, you know, have had multiple different ethos throughout my life, especially being younger and not as open, not as awakens, etc. Maybe if that's the term, you know, not it's in touch with myself with a capital S, not as in touch with my spirituality. Something that's always kind of held up is that the general laws of the universe, like the as above, so below, like those basic concepts are like just within me. Like I'll learn them and I'll read them and things like that. But it's something like it's you can almost tell as a human if you're really in touch with one's real self that whatever you're learning, for example, right now, whatever I'm learning at the moment, if I'm reading a book, like, this is not something that I've learned myself just this once. Like
Right. Yeah.
this has happened before. Like this is some
Right.
some version of this has happened before. This is leading up to something bigger, and it's that's that.
Yeah,
What is that something bigger that kind of keeps the soul going? And just what's the meaning? To
right.
experience the good and the bad. And what is good and bad? I mean, there isn't, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Yes.
I had a specific one that I wanted to kind of touch on you with. I heard you mention something about Atlantis and the economy of Atlantis, which and I know I'm drawing parallels to like Atlantis and now, and of
You
course because you are someone who's heard a lot about Atlantis through your regression sessions, which are probably some of the most thoroughly mentored in the world at this time in this timeline. Debt slaves, the class system, the classes in Atlantis. So I've heard you speak on, and I think it's in
yeah.
one of the books, where and Plato even talks about this, like the rings of the city of Atlantis. The rich class living in the center, the middle class living kind of on the outskirts, and in the outer class, which surprised me, which was the lower class, but they were actually slaves, debt slaves,
Uh-huh.
etc.
It was so
That really,
interesting because if you owed money to a rich family, you'd be their slave until you paid off the debt, basically.
and it almost kind of feels like
It's the
that's
same. It's there's so
really allegorical with what we've got going on.
and the inner ring, like the elite system, the middle ring,
Yeah.
people could never get to be in the inner ring, really. I thought that was interesting too when I was learning about Atlantis. The best you could hope for was to marry into it, but you would never be there. Only the families that were of
Mm.
the inner ring really were going to stay in the inner ring. There's so many parallels to our current society.
Yeah, it's
Mm.
like of course, it's not in the books that they printed, but like the Rothschild families and the Rockefellers and the Orsinis and the leading families of today and the ones that we didn't even know about. But I mean,
Right,
it's very much, or just people talk about, for example, banking cartel, the big
right,
banking
right,
business, the Federal Reserve, the pharmacy industry, which has
right,
been referred to as the pharmaceutical cartel,
right.
and actual drug cartels, whatever you want to talk about. Like they're all, I guess, in that same kind of spirit where it just seems so parallel to what we're dealing with.
I know,
Like
it's so fascinating.
when
Really,
I'm reading your book about Atlantis 13,000 years ago, and what I'm watching kind of unfold here in Tampa, Florida, or on the TV or whatever, and it's just
I
it's
think
almost
just to help us do things differently, and we're just supposed to follow along with what we believe, like that inner guide. That's who we need to follow along with, and we messed that up. That's the biggest thing we messed up before, is following that voice.
so you'd say the biggest mistake we made before or last time was that we didn't. Would you say,
And stay
would it
true
be
to
safe to say
us.
we sought outward, we didn't seek inward, we should have sought self?
Exactly. Exactly. And we're already programmed since birth to seek outward. So I think the biggest mistake is following along with that brainwashing and not realizing it's time to go the other way. It's
Yeah, that's very well said. And that's what a lot of people go through. And I think it can start with anything. It doesn't have to start with anything in particular. It's kind of, like we said earlier, like, well, if that's a lie, then what else? What else is a lie?
right.
If that's not true, then what else
Exactly.
isn't true? Yeah, I mean, that's if anybody here, anybody's listening, if that's wherever you're at in that journey, like it's okay, whatever you're feeling. If you feel a little angry at the moment, if you're not going to feel angry forever, but it's all right to feel a little. I think everybody has a little bit of anger at some point when that paradigm shifts, when someone
Yeah.
finds out that
First.
everything. When I started to find out that most of what I had generally based my life upon, and beliefs and things like that, and put my trust in over my life, wasn't necessarily, not even that it wasn't true, but just that it wasn't 100% exactly like I
Right.
thought it was. is the shock. So to find out that things could be not only a little different, but just way
Yeah.
completely different,
And just
and that it was maybe
about
programmed.
technology, like how you found out about this technology, you couldn't get it. I mean, it's frustrating and people do get upset, that they've been lied to. And I think that that's really just the first step, in all of this is to know that first. And then you can start to since you know that, you can start to investigate because you know that it's mostly a lie.
Now, something for me was the CE5 protocols. Like as a meditator, of course, fell into looking into the CE5 protocols, trying them, and actually finding that, wow, this works, which is awesome. It's absolutely, it's not something that I don't host events or anything like that, but it was something that actually I've had experiences with, even with, people who are, yeah, like I identified when you talk about your subject, your friend who's a non-believer. I did a CE5 meditation. I went on a walk with somebody who I'm close with who is not a believer at all, but we had a very impactful contact experience. And she's on camera freaking out like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And it's really, really cool to have had that experience. I've heard Dr. Stephen Greer say things like, we can bypass, the powers that be. We can bypass that. We can
Yeah.
we can connect with the higher beings ourselves and let them know that we're ready to join, we're ready to connect, we come in peace. what are your
Totally.
what are your thoughts on that with with I don't know, ETs, extra dimensionals, CE5 protocols in general? It's something that more people are doing.
Well, I actually forgot one thing that I'm doing is actually in August with Paula Harris, who's like one of the top UFO researchers. I'm hosting this event called Crestone, and we do CE5s together, but we do like a workshop basically. So we talk about our research and then we have everybody join and do this together. I find it to be a great way to connect with other versions of yourself. I
Yeah.
think that people are having a lot more contact experience too, because some of the different versions of ourselves have said that they have tried going to like the leader and they started getting angry because some of the things aren't going the way they want. Of course, they can't totally intervene, but they can definitely be guides. And so they started to go more to the people, and so
Right.
more and more people are having like experiences where they are connecting
That makes
with other
sense.
versions of themselves.
That actually makes really good sense because it's kind of, like I guess extraterrestrials could be other versions of us. I've heard it. Yeah, I kind of like mo going deep into soul theory. Like monads
Or
and the
what
concept of
be
the oversoul with the parts of the oversoul, the monads streaming into the human,
right?
the avatar at the same time. I guess it could be said that extraterrestrials we are extraterrestrials.
Right?
Is that kind of the way it is?
Basically, yeah, I would say so. Everybody has a version of them that's extraterrestrial. So,
Okay.
I mean, you've a past everybody has a past version of yourself and a future version, and it's all happening in this now moment. So, I don't think there's really anyone that's not in some way connected to a group of extraterrestrials or all of them, even.
It's like we're all so much more just filled with magic and wonder and
Yeah,
awe than we really know. Like even people who
true.
really feel well adjusted and happy with, the way everything's going and whatnot. It's the wonders of what we really are, the abilities what really truly within us. Yeah, that's magic.
It's beautiful.
Inside of us is like so much more than we could ever have fathomed.
What a
It's
fun time, challenging but exciting time to be alive.
indeed, indeed. I think that often, like, I kind of crave the chaos a little bit. Not, I've always liked to live life on the edge a little more than the center, but yeah, what a hell of a time to be alive.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Who knows what's going to happen?
Right.
Uh, it's really fun to be even anywhere close to the front lines of disclosure, and even, well, and you don't have to know people or be a big name or have connections to be on, quote, the front lines of disclosure either. You just need to be
Exactly.
open. You just need to have an open heart and an open soul, an open mind to, I guess, wouldn't you agree, Sarah, to just
Oh,
seek help?
definitely. Definitely follow your heart, whatever that is
Yeah.
for you. Could be
And
different
you
than
don't,
other people. And we're
I
supposed
mean,
to
you
be like
don't,
our individual self, not like other people anyway. So you came here for a specific purpose. Just follow that and
yeah.
not
And
worry.
it's
Oh,
like, it's hard not to just trust. That's like, it's hard to trust, I guess, for some people, right away that
fine.
that's all going to work out. But I
Yeah.
mean, it absolutely can work out when you just
Yeah,
lean right into the true capital S self. I mean,
exactly. Exactly.
and then you might find that what your definition of things working out really is not even the same as what you thought it was originally. It might
Right.
have been completely different before, but it
Right.
might be.
Well, it was wonderful talking to you. Thank you so much. It was wonderful,
Yes,
like
Sarah.
getting a chance to be on your show finally. And
Yeah, it was a really great chance to just have a chat with you and ask some questions about, I do follow your content and your
thank
material
you
and
much.
such. So it's a kind of a fun one for me to get you to, to ask you some specifics on some little blurbs I've heard here and there and whatnot. And I just respect you very, very much for what you do. I think what you do is amazing. You're a trailblazer, but you're also carrying a very important torch. I mean, I think Dolores would be Miss Cannon, or her soul, wherever it is. I mean, I'm sure she's proud, and
Thanks. Thanks. It's
what
really
what
nice
you're
of you to say.
doing is amazing.
You're doing you're doing such a great thing too. Thank you so much for what you're doing.
Well, thank you, Sarah, and thank you for being here to support it. And guys, Sarah's book, Hypnotist Journey to Atlantis. The other one's a Hypnotist Journey to the Sphinx. They're actually always on the background of this set here. So that's Sarah Breskman Cosme. Those are thousands of recounts of regression hypnotherapy sessions from people who have basically come back with the same responses. Sarah, I know you've got a schedule, so we don't want to keep you. It's been amazing to have you here on the Immersive Podcast. You guys can, any of Sarah's links, her Instagram, her website, her upcoming events, all of that will be in the bio of this video on Spotify. If you're listening to this on Spotify, they'll be there as well. You can find her on Instagram. And Sarah, is there anything else that you wanted to kind of point out before we left?
Um, Not really, just that you don't even have to find a practitioner if you wanted to get a regression. I mean, basically, you could just explore yourself and meditation. And when you're waking up in the morning and you still have access to your dream, if that's the same state that you'd be in a session, that's the deep theta state. So you can try to prolong that state and start to just kind of prolong it to the point where you can start asking questions, and you can go into so many different places and memories from that state. So you could use that if you just can't afford, a session or can't get one.
Yeah, I think that's awesome to point that out. That I would say seek inward, which is so simple. But yeah, seek inward. I mean, you can do a lot by seeking inward, and little tricks by great those ones who come before us, like Sarah Breskman Cosme, who can give us little tips about how to stay in theta state just a little bit longer. I mean, there's right there on the Immersive Podcast exclusive. Sarah, thank you so much for being here. A shout out to GFL Clothing, Galactic Federation of Light Clothing. Sarah and I both are affiliated with them. They are affiliate sponsors of the show. If you want to wear clothing for light workers, they sell all sorts of stuff. It sells Starseed, it says Starseed Lightworker, etc. They are using high frequency fabrics. They're even looking into photonically charging their clothes, the particles in their clothes. Links in the bio. If you add the code Tyler33 to your order, you get a free baseball hat. And one more shout out to Unified TV, Network for Truth. Links in the bio. I'm sure you've heard of Unified TV. So thank you guys, and a shout out to our affiliate sponsors. Sarah Breskman Cosme, it's been a great conversation, and thank you for being with me here today. bless you. Many, many thanks. And I hope, of course, that we get to speak again sometime soon in
Oh,
some fashion.
definitely. Definitely. Thank you so much for having me on. It was such a pleasure. Thank you.
The honor was all mine. Absolutely. Yeah, we will be in touch soon. Hopefully, I'll see you at one of your events or something like that. You
Yes.
know, we
That would
never
be
know
great.
what the world brings. So,
You never
yeah,
know. Thank you so much. Have a
thank,
good night.
thank you. You too. All right. Everybody, that was Sarah Breskman Cosme, and I've really been looking forward to that conversation because I think in 10, 15, 20 years that Sarah Breskman Cosme is going to be up there in the likes of Edgar Casey's and Jane Roberts and Dolores Cannons that we kind of speak of today as those first wavers, those real pioneers of spirituality. What Sarah's doing is just absolutely incredible. Author of A Hypnotist Journey to the Sphinx, Hypnotist Journey to Atlantis. Gotta love her. She's all over Gaia TV. She's a representative of the Galactic Federation of Light, GFL Clothing as well. So another shout out to them, Dotan and Tavel. And thank you again to our affiliate sponsor, Unified TV. This has been another episode of the Immersive Podcast. I am your host, Tyler Tivador. Thanks for watching, and 2 episodes a week. God will never let you down. Tyler out.